Hi everybody, this is Dr. Nick Smilovsky with Bad Elf bringing you a quick video on how to use Esri's ArcGIS Pro desktop to create a feature class and web map that is going to be able to be used with your Bad Elf products, primarily the new Bad Elf Flex GNSS solution. So jumping right to the chase, let's go ahead and take a look. You should be seeing my screen. And please note that you may be using a different version of ArcGIS Pro than I am, and that may have some nuanced difference with the different screens and options, but this should be good enough to get you through the basics on what you need to be thinking about when you set up a project using ArcGIS Pro desktop and the Bad Elf Flex or other Bad Elf products. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank template, and I'm going to create a map. And under map, I'm going to change the name, and I'm going to call it Bad Elf underscore test underscore airport underscore project. Now, why am I using underscores? It's an old school GIS thing. You really don't want to use spaces or other special characters. In the world of GIS, underscores are preferred. I am storing it in my documents location so I know where to get to it later, and I'm creating a folder to make sure that I'm organized. Now, the project should be created, and if you're familiar with GIS, you're going to know that there's a lot of ways to do anything in GIS. There's at least 4 different ways to do at least any one task in GIS at a minimum. This is just the way I would go about doing it, and so I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with if you're doing it a different way, don't worry, don't sound the alarm, that's a-okay. This is just one way to go about doing this. Now, I am in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. In fact, I'm up in Scottsdale here at the Scottsdale Air Park / airport where the Bad Elf office is. And so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in there just because I'm a spatial person and I like to be able to see spatially where I am setting my project up. Now, the first thing I'm going to do after zooming in here is I'm going to go ahead and open my catalog pane. I'm going to dock that so you can see it on the right side of my screen without problem. And I'm going to go to the databases drop down using these little triangles. I'm going to drop down to the GDB. Now, notice that the GDB is automatically created and it utilized the name I had selected when I created the project. If you want to change that name or create a new database, you certainly can, but for today's purposes, I'm going to use the database that it set up for me. Next, I'm going to right-click the database, and I'm going to select New, and I'm going to select Feature Class. Now, you may be asking, what does a feature data set mean, and what does a feature class mean? When thinking of the feature data set, that'd be a higher level of data. Basically, it's a way to organize your different data types. And so if we were collecting transportation data here, you could create a feature data set called airport transportation, and then create several feature classes under its archetype structure and name thing and collect data like anything associated with transportation, roads and streets and utility manholes or street signs, anything that had to do with the transportation features. Conversely, you could say, for an example, use a feature data set and collect all the different types of landscape attributes and features. So things like trees and bushes, vegetation, decomposed granite areas, DG areas, turf areas, you name it. For today, we're just going to use a feature class. This will be used to show as an example what you want to kind of replicate when you're doing your project. Now keep in mind this is going to be a feature class demo, and so we need the feature class because the GPS units want to populate data somewhere. When you're out using Collector or one of the new ArcGIS field map applications, Survey 123, Quick Capture, you name it, we always want to be populating the data into a feature class. So let's go ahead and create a feature class here. And I'm going to go ahead and name it test underscore points. That's because I want it to be signified as a test. It's going to be points, so it's very intuitive. I use the underscore. You can set an alias, but you certainly don't have to. I'm going to go ahead and set it as a feature class type storing points to match the test points. You could do different types here, but we only really suggest using points. I'm going to have z-values selected. That way it's storing 3D data. I'm going to go ahead and select the next page, and this is the fields option. So if I wanted to, say, create a new field like comments, I could type that in here, and I could leave it as a text data type, or I could come in here and say date, and for an example, I could set date as the drop-down data type. Lots of different types, both numbers, numeric-based, and text-based. So I'm going to select date. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click next to the third page. And so this is where things get slightly more complicated. However, because we know that the Bad Elf Flex, when operating in what we call extreme mode, so we are going to be using RTK via Intrip. We're going to be getting corrections from a local Arizona CORS network. We know that that CORS network is projected in a specific coordinate system. And so I'm going to go ahead and search for that using its ID code 6318. And you will see it also pops up as a favorite. That's North American Datum 1983-2011. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. You can also do a current Z if you'd like. So that's your vertical coordinate system. And you can see here, you can select several different types. So ellipsoidal base, for an example, world, and you can see that there's all different types of things in here if you know which one you want to set it to. For today's purposes, I'm going to leave it as none because, to be very frank, I'm only concerned with the horizontal or the X and Y location to put my dot on the map. I'm not concerned with elevation. I just need to be able to say relocate my test points in the field at a later date. If excuse me, if you need to set up a z-value, just make sure that you understand which z-value and z-system is being utilized from your RTK network specifically. So I'm going to use NAD 83. I'm going to leave this as blank. I'm going to click next. Before I go any further, I do want to make a comment that when we're collecting these data, it's always best to set your coordinate systems up so that they match throughout the process. So from as early as creating the data set here, the feature class here in Arc Pro, to getting it to ArcGIS Online, to collecting the data, to making sure that in Arc Collector, you've got the correct location profile set up. And as you're downloading the data back through, you'd always want to try to minimize the amount of transformations. It's a best management practice. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I set that horizontal projection system to NAD 1983-2011. I'm going to continue. Do I need to set any tolerances? You can. I'm going to leave it as default. Resolution, I'm going to leave it as default. And storage configuration, I'm also going to leave it as default. I'm going to finish this process, this geoprocessing tool up by clicking Finish. It may take a little bit of time. This is your computer creating a feature class in the geodatabase. If all works correctly, we should then see this feature class in catalog. There it is, test points. And if we want, we can then drop it into the map by simply clicking and dragging it over. It adds the data. You can see it on the drawing order on the left under the contents pane. It's a green dot. If we'd like to change the symbology for said test point, we certainly can too by clicking this green dot. And just for fun today, I'm going to select something like a cross here on the right-hand side. I'm going to click the properties, and I'm going to make the color of that cross nice and red and large so you can see it. There is a good example. I'm going to click apply, and you can notice now that the symbology of the point under drawing order on the contents pane is a red cross. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the symbology tab because we don't need it anymore. And because I've now created a test points feature layer in my ArcGIS Desktop Pro, I'm going to go ahead and do something quickly, and I'm going to save my project. I have PTSD from earlier years of doing GIS projects, and once you have something deleted on you by accident, you will always save. So I always recommend, both to my students and colleagues and customers, that you always want to save. Okay, so we've got this feature class set up that we're going to want to eventually get to our GPS units. But before we do that, we recommend using a geoprocessing tool that will enable you to collect the GNSS data associated from the GPS when you are out collecting points. So I'm going to go ahead and click this geoprocessing here up under the View tab at the top, View, Geoprocessing. I'm going to go to the tab on the right, and I'm going to type in GNSS, and oddly enough, when you type in GNSS, it actually finds what I'm looking for, because it says in the description, adds and updates GNSS attributes to feature classes and domains in geodatabases. However, the actual tool is called add GPS metadata fields. I apologize. But if you type in add GPS metadata fields or GNSS, you'll see that. So add GPS for an example. There it is. So I'm going to select the first geoprocessing tool in the list. I'm going to use this drop-down arrow, and I want to select test points. Okay, and again, this is going to add a set of attributes into your into the data fields for your feature class. It's going to use the metadata captured through the RTK correction source. This is a great way to have authoritative data that you can always go back to. It's also a way that you can check at a later date and see how good the data were that you collected. So I'm going to click Run. Hopefully this works. Anytime you do a live demo, make the assumption that Murphy's Law will take place and something won't work. However, it looks like it worked okay. Add GPS metadata fields. You can see down there it was completed. You'll notice a little triangle here with an exclamation point saying warning. That's just because we've already run the tool on that specific data set. And so I'm going to hide the geoprocessing. And just because it's a best management practice, I'm going to click Save again and make sure that I save the desktop project that this feature class is in. Just a side note, always remember that if you're editing the feature classes themselves, not something we're going to do in this video, that when you save the desktop project, you're not actually saving the editing feature class. You need to save the feature class from the Edit tab, and you actually need to save the project. That's something, if you would like to discuss more, please reach out to me, sales@bad-elf.com, or Nick, N-I-K, that's Nick, N-I-K, at bad-elf.com. We can certainly discuss what I'm talking about here. Okay, so we've got a feature class with the GNSS metadata set up with the correct projection system. The next thing that I need to do is I'm going to go into this contents pane. I'm going to select the test points. I'm going to right-click it. I'm going to go down to sharing, and you can see there is an option here that says share as web layer. I'm going to select share as a web layer. Sorry, disappeared. There it is. Okay, name, test points. If I wanted to change it, I could. I need to go ahead and fill out anything with a red dot. So this layer is for demonstration purposes only. Tags, I'm going to put bad elf. It's going to be a feature type. This is for tiles and vector tiles. This is for raster data versus vector data. If you want to convert vector data into tiled raster data, you can do that as well. For our purposes, we want to select feature. And if you had a location on your ArcGIS Online account that you specifically wanted it, you could. For this case, I'm going to use the Webinar 2 folder that I had created in a couple weeks ago's webinar when I had shown you how to do this process through ArcGIS Online. Now I'm showing kind of an additional through desktop. Thus, I guess this implies that, notice that at the top right hand corner, I'm logged into my account with Bad Elf, which means anything from ArcGIS Online or what we like to call AGOL will actually be linked into this project. And so I'm going to select the Webinar 2, and for the video's sake, I'm going to click Everyone. Bad Elf, and I'm going to click Publish. You can see that it's got to do a couple things to prepare the data to be shared onto the cloud or the World Wide Web up into your ArcGIS online account. While it's doing that, I'm going to use this time to go ahead and pull up my Google Chrome. And from Google Chrome here, I went ahead and went to the arcgis.com login page. I'm going to click Sign In. I'm using my ArcGIS login, Nick_Bad Elf with my password. Notice that I'm not using a enterprise or any other way, just my normal login. This is how my account is set up. I'm going to click Sign In. Okay, now I want to go ahead and jump right to the Content tab at the top. Once you're in there, you'll see your folders I was just discussing a few minutes ago on the left-hand side, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says Webinar 2. All right, notice that test points, feature layer and service definition, July 7th, that's today, has been uploaded. If I was to skip back quickly to ArcGIS Pro, you would see that the save web layer successfully published, and everything is good to go on this front. So that is a good sign. And so again, what we just did is we created a feature class. It was empty. We added the metadata. Then we uploaded that feature class to our ArcGIS online account. It is now right here. So I'm going to click the feature layer here, and I want to go through a couple things to make sure that this feature layer is set up appropriately. First thing is I'm going to go down to the Share tab, and I want to make sure that it is set up for everyone. Perfect. If you wanted to set up just for your organization, didn't want to share it to the world, that's what you would want to do. Additionally, I want to come up here and I want to make sure that under Data, that all of the fields are there. And now notice that receiver name, horizontal accuracy, vertical accuracy, latitude, longitude, a bunch of additional columns, attribute columns are there. These came from that Add GPS metadata geoprocessing tool. And also notice that there should be somewhere in here, there they are, comment and date, the two fields that we actually manually created. If you wanted to, you could add and change and do any type of manipulation here as well on the fields. And last but not least, I'm going to go to Settings. I always like to do the delete protection. I don't want people accidentally deleting my feature class. Additionally, notice under the feature layer hosted items, under editing specifically, none of these are on. For this to be an editable working feature class that will work with your Bad Elf Flex or other Bad Elf units, you want to make sure you have enable editing selected. I love to keep track of who created and updated features. That's a good way to maintain data fidelity. You also want to keep track of who created and last updated features, data fidelity. And I always select Enable Sync for those people that need to utilize these feature classes, data layers offline and for collaboration out in the field when you may not have internet connection. So once I have those all selected, I need to click Save. Once that's done, you can see it's been updated successfully. I'm going to go back to my Overview tab, and I'm going to say open this test points feature layer in a map viewer. Okay, and so here's our map viewer. And so this map viewer is going to be what I create to create to be used in Art Collector. I want to make it apparent that you could go back to ArcGIS Pro, and instead of sharing the feature class like we did by right-clicking it and going down to sharing, you could also share the entire map. And so you could have map, click the share button at the top, and you could go to share as web map. And if you did that, you would basically be skipping the process I'm doing here. However, I personally like to create the web maps on ArcGIS Online. I like to utilize the data in desktop. This is something I personally do, but you could certainly create the feature class in Pro and the map in Pro, upload all of that and then just open that up. However, due to some of the settings and my personal experience, I like to upload the points or the feature class first. I want to then go into the options in ArcGIS Online about those feature classes, and then I create the map. So again, I'm going to similarly zoom into Arizona because for this project, I'm hypothetically collecting points around the Bad Elf area, around this airport in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I save this map. So I'm going to click up here and do my save. Now, you could name it the same thing as your ArcGIS Pro, or you could name it something more specific for the field people. And so if this was the Scottsdale, test data collection map, something like that, you name it. You could name it whatever you want. Let's actually put an underscore under there. You could put tag like Bad Elf. Again, this is all custom to what you want to do it as, but you have to save it. This is the name that will pop up in your app on your smart device, phone or tablet, right? Description of map. This is for testing purposes only. I'm going to save it in that same folder, Webinar 2 I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to click Save Map. All right, now that I have saved this map, I've got the editable feature class in it, and that editable feature class is shared or editable. We are almost ready to go on to the Arc Collector screen and make sure that this all worked appropriately. The last thing that I like to recommend is that you turn off and manipulate some of the pop-ups that can be shown not only here in ArcGIS Online, but through the third-party Esri app on your smart device. So go ahead and click the 3 dots for the test points feature class. If you hover over it, called More Options. I select that, and I can come here and I can configure the pop-ups. Now, right away, all of the attribute that we created manually and the geoprocessing tool, add GPS metadata, all of those attributes will be here. Now, if we want to turn some of these off or make them uneditable because we don't want people to actually be able to edit the automatic metadata, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to click Configure Attributes. Okay. First off, I'm not going to have it display most of these things because the tech in the field doesn't need to know it. The other thing is I'm not going to make everything editable because the tech in the field doesn't need to have everything editable either. So then I'm going to come here and I want to turn on specific things. I want the tech to see the comments field we created and edit it. I want to have the date as well. I'm going to also say display the receiver name. So this is a good way to know that you have actively Bluetooth connected and you're properly paired with your Bad Elf device and your smart device. If the Bad Elf name does not pop up here when you are running your data collection, and it says, say, something like internal GPS, you know that you are not correctly connected. Okay, so the other things, we could go down here and you could show, say Latin long, for an example. You want to display the Latin long of the point. Okay, so I've got Latin long. Lots of other things you can turn on and off. I'm going to also say I want to display the creator, the edit date, and the editor. So again, this is specific to what you would like, but I want to show who created it, who's editing it, and when. And that'll just be for the text in the field, and then the other fields we just went through. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click OK, and that is now saved. Well, it's registered. I need to finalize it and click Save. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to create a new share where I am opening up my iOS iPad. So if you give me just one moment, I'm going to share the screen with my iPad. Okay. And you should now see my iPad. I am going to go to the Collector app, and I just want to make sure that the map that I created is there. Now that was an old map, apologize. So you can see here, these are the list of my maps, and looking through them, make sure that is updated. Well, there it is. Sorry, it took me a second there. Scottsdale Test Data Center, there it is. I can actually click the map details, and you can see it. And if we wanted to, we could open it from there. Now, just keep in mind that you're gonna have to do some setup on the actual iPad or iOS device or your Android device, whatever device that you're using Collector on, or your other Esri apps as well. Now, truth be told, I am not connected right now with a GPS device. So you're gonna, if it pops up that there is no accuracy, that's because I'm not actually connected. I'm inside the house. And I went ahead and clicked the profile button at the top left, and you can now see these different options. Now, I want to make sure that I've got under collection my accuracy set and my GPS averaging. So for accuracy, this is what's the worst accuracy of the unit. Because it's a 1 meter or 3 foot or better unit and it's standard mode, the Bad Elf Flex, I want to have it set for 3 feet. If you wanted to be collecting survey grade data and you wanted to ensure that your technicians were collecting that high grade of a data, you would say want to put in inches or 1 foot. You would want to adjust this. Next, you want to have GPS averaging either on or off. If you think that you need a little bit higher of an accuracy, we do recommend using GPS averaging because on the whole, it should create statistically a better point location based off of multiple recordings. Now, you would turn it on, and then you would say how many points to average. And honestly, depending on what kind of accuracy you needed, what type of point you were collecting, and how time constrained you were, you could either have that on or off. There are some disadvantages for GPS averaging due to some statistics, but on the whole, we do recommend it if you need a little bit better accuracy for a point. We do not recommend averaging for any lines or polylines. Now, under the location, there are provider and profile. Now, provider, you would want to make sure that you connect to the Bad Elf unit with the serial number that you have, and you would do that by simply clicking the add button in the top right hand corner, and if I was Bluetooth paired, you would see it pop up right there. But again, not really getting into all of that today. Make sure you have your check mark next to that unit, and you can see here that traditionally I connect to Bad Elf 144718. I also put in the antenna height knowing that the phase center for the Bad Elf Flex is 23 centimeters, and I'm on a fixed pole of 2 meters, so I've got it created there. Last but not least, you want to go into the profile survey, okay? And I already have created my survey profile, and you can see it there. Notice that 6318 GCS NAD 1983-2011, that same coordinate system we discussed earlier is the coordinate system I selected for the data that will be coming in from our RTK network. The map coordinate system, i.e. kind of the base layer, what you're seeing the imagery or the topo map from, I'm going to leave as WGS 1984 Web Mercator Auxiliary Sphere code 3857, and I'm going to set my data transformation to WGS 1984 ITRF08 to NAD 1983-2011. This is the first thing that pops up as an option. Just to go through that with you, I'm going to click Add. Okay, and then under search here, I'm going to look for 6318. There it is. Okay, the map coordinate system is going to be Web Mercator Auxiliary Sphere 3857. You can then zoom into that part of the world. We're in Arizona. Click Next. And the very top option there is the one I read to you originally. I'm going to select that. Done. And you can name it, and I'm just going to call it Test. I'm going to click Save, and then I'm going to actually select Test, and I am ready to go with my location profile. Again, this is for the Bad Elf Flex, because we're operating the Bad Elf Flex in a RTK mode that's getting corrections from a local CORS station. That's a continually operating station. We need to set the coordinate systems of collector to match that data source and to match the original data we collected in the field. Okay, so that is basically what I wanted to show you for this video. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for just a moment. But I want to talk to you just for a couple seconds and say that if anything on this video piqued your interest or you have more questions about it, we'd love to hear from you at Bad Elf. You can reach us at sales at bad-elf.com. Again, that's sales at bad-elf.com. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Also look at our YouTube pages for these videos. Again, we really appreciate this. Hopefully this is going to help you a little bit with using ArcGIS Pro Desktop with the Flex. Thank you very much, and just remember too, that now that you've got this all set up, when you collect data in the field, it's all going to be live. So you can go back to ArcGIS Online, and you can then download that ArcGIS Online data to ArcGIS Pro. All right, we really appreciate it, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.